everyone, welcome back to Reissued. If you're new here, my name is Andrew. If you're not new here, welcome back to part 4 of my studio makeover. When I started this series, I had no idea it would have this many parts, but here we are. Just to recap here, in part 1, we were planning and brainstorming. Part 2, we raised the ceiling. Part 3 was a desk makeover thrift flip. And here we are for part 4 for a DIY French Cleat wall organizer system. And so in this video, I'm going to be talking you through how we created and installed this really cool custom DIY French Cleat system using a ton of salvaged and thrifted materials that can be readjusted, repositioned, rearranged at any time to accommodate my changing needs in the space. Before we get started today, if you get to the end of this video and you like how the finished product looks or you enjoyed the process, feel free to hit the like button. Also, be sure that you're subscribed. I'm so close to 20,000 subscribers, which is just blowing my mind. Let's hit 20,000 together. Also, this video is going to be in the home makeover playlist where all the videos in my home renovation go. But additionally, I'm going to make a playlist just for the studio makeover series since there are so many videos now. I want you to be able to watch them in order and see how far we've come. All right, y'all. Can't wait to show you how this project went. Let's jump on in. Okay, so if you're a regular here on my channel, you know that I'm kind of a bad YouTuber in the sense that I don't do a makeover in a weekend, or I don't do 4 consecutive videos on one makeover. This has been kind of an ongoing process for months. That works for me, partly because YouTube is not my full-time job and I have other things to do, partly because it's important to me that my spaces feel really layered with a lot of vintage and thrifted pieces, and that's hard to kind of rush that process. And finally, I love to include y'all in the creative process and get your feedback in the comments. So the idea for this project actually came from one of you all watching at home on my thrifted desk makeover video. I had mentioned in that video that I was looking for options to utilize more of the empty wall space, partly from a function perspective to get a lot of my items that were around the floor, cluttering everything up on the walls and utilizing that nice tall ceiling now, but also to kind of create more balance in the room visually. I feel like all the rest of the room felt very full and this whole area felt really blank. I had been looking into some pegboard options, but I was struggling to find things that felt both functional and also had kind of an aesthetic that I was going for. So shout out to Lisa Gaines who dropped this comment on that video. I always read your comments and I make an effort to respond as much as I can, but my mom actually saw this comment before I did and she texted it to me and was like, this is such a great idea. We need to do this. And so we started researching French Cleat systems based on that comment. And we decided that it would be a perfect solution for the space, both in terms of function and in terms of the aesthetics. So what is a French Cleat system? Basically, you have long strips of wood that are cut on a 45-degree angle that are attached to the wall into the stud so that they're able to hold a lot of weight. And then you have other pieces that come on and fit down inside, and that's where you attach your hooks or your brackets and your shelves. And those can very simply be lifted off and placed anywhere else in the room. So it's a fully adjustable system. This is just gonna fill up that space visually and also give me maximum storage and maximum options for rearranging if needed down the line. Let's rewind back to the very beginning and I'll talk you through the whole process. All right, day 1 on the French Cleat wall project. My mom and I went to Ollie's, which is like a liquidation center, at like 8:30 last night. We saw that they had a big shipment of like hooks and sort of garage storage type stuff. So we went and got some amazing things there. We got a couple of different packs of hooks. I was really feeling inspired by the Family Handyman project and kind of how that looked, where they had the wood and then all of the hooks were kind of black and matching. So that's the look that we're going for, really keeping a lot of black metal, just so everything feels utilitarian, but also unified. So today we're gonna go in and start creating the wood pieces that are gonna go across the wall. Probably going to be painting those to match the wall so they blend out nicely. And then we're going to go in and start creating the little pieces that the hooks will attach to that will allow them to be flexible and be able to be moved around the room. I'm so excited to get started. I think this is going to really transform the room and be super functional. So the plan here is to put the wood pieces all across this wall, not higher than the window, so that'll kind of be the stopping point. Here along the back wall, up over the door. Probably not gonna do them up here. I might hang some pictures from the picture reel there. And then over on this wall, we might just do this lower part of the wall here, or we might take it all the way over the door and behind the mannequins up top over there. I definitely have some thoughts about what I'm planning to hang where, but it's hard because until we had the hardware, it was tough to know kind of what we were working with in terms of what the options were. So now that we have some hardware, we can start to really look at like where things might actually hang. But again, with the French Cleat system, there is some flexibility, so we might be able to try moving things around and seeing what looks best as well as what's most functional.
For our wall cleats, we're going to be using these rough cut boards that were pulled off the old porch roof when the porch was reconstructed. Plywood is often recommended for French cleats since it tends to be stronger and less prone to splitting. However, we had this on hand for free, and it's old wood, which tends to be stronger and more durable. We start by doing multiple passes through the table saw to cut these down to the desired size and shape. First cuts just take off any bad edges and square everything off. Next cut is done a 45-degree angle at a 2.5-inch width to create that cleat shape. This cut was pretty tricky to feed through perfectly, so a few of the pieces are not exact, meaning that the cleats fit a little bit looser than would be ideal, but it's okay in the end. And final cut is to take off the rough front so that we don't have to spend forever sanding or planing these to make them look nice. And repeat.
So I did a little bit of math and mapped out what I'm thinking in terms of spacing and placement for these pieces. I decided on the spacing based on my IKEA Enhet shelves that I got in the as-is section. I measured how far those shelves are spaced apart and so that it'll look nice and like purposeful when they go up. And then for the heights, I didn't want any tangent lines with like the height of the fireplace or the height of any of the doors or windows or anything. I wanted to kind of split those heights, if that makes sense. So you can see with the placement here, it's always kind of in between. I didn't want to like match the height of the door or match the height of the fireplace. I'm trying to kind of like split things apart so that it like butts up against. Otherwise, I think it would look really weird if things were coming to like exactly the same height. So based on these measurements, I've decided which walls are getting which pieces and have tallied up all of the links that we need. And so we're gonna finish up cutting to make sure that we have enough pieces to go on the full walls.
Once all of our boards are ripped down, we start making the cuts to length for each wall. We make sure to measure each board individually, since the old house walls are hardly ever straight or level. Blunt cuts for up against the rosettes, 30-degree cuts to hug the curves of the door moldings, and 45-degree cuts for the corners. Now they're ready for a coat of primer. It's imperative that these are screwed into the wall studs so that they'll be super strong and able to support the weight of the shelves, hooks, and all the items I need to store. However, finding the studs wasn't all that simple. Most studs are 16 inches apart, but where to start?
That might be one. That seemed like one. It didn't just like bounce out. Yeah, right there. Okay. Right.
As we hang these, we pre-drill the holes to prevent the wood from splitting, countersink the holes to allow the screw heads to be inset, and then screw them in with 3-inch construction screws. With all the cleats hung, I can go in and start caulking all of the seams and filling the screw holes. I went back again later off camera with more caulk and a putty knife to get all the screw holes flat and seamless before we paint.
So
So right now we're cutting down some of these pieces for our cleats. These are the same pieces that we put up on the wall. These were the offcuts. This is the other side that we didn't make look nice, so we're gonna have to sand that down a little bit so it can slide in and match the angle on the wall so it holds up on the wall. I think I'm gonna sand these down and stain them to match the cabinet that's in there, just to give a little bit more natural wood and to sort of anchor the black that's gonna go on top of it. Let's make our first cleats for the IKEA Enhet shelves. We cut a top and bottom cleat to the width of the shelves, 18 inches for this one. Then we screw the mounting bar to one of the cleats right at the point where the flat part meets the angle cut. Let's place the bottom cleat in below and hang the shelf unit on the mounting bar. To hold this in at the bottom, we use the included hardware to screw the bottom into the lower cleat. We'll have to undo and repeat these steps after we sand and stain the cleats, but it's nice to know the plan will work.
All right, y'all, today was a little bit stressful, but we got a lot done. All the pieces are up on the walls. I just finished caulking all of the holes so they look a lot more uniform now, which is awesome. I'm gonna try to get these painted to match the wall tomorrow, and then we'll be able to finish up all the cleats and really decide on the layout here. I have a lot of thinking to do about how I wanna lay out all the pieces here and how to best utilize the height and what's gonna be most accessible. So lots to think about here, but great progress today.
Now let's make some more cleats for other pieces. For our big shelves that will use the big brackets, we want a long cleat that will go vertically in between the two wall cleats, like the one in the family handyman picture. So we rip down a 1-inch decking board to 2.5 inches, cut 2 little pieces of our pre-made cleats to match the width, and glue and screw the 2 pieces together, being sure to countersink the screws again so that the piece can sit flat against the wall. To get the distance right for the bottom cleat, we put the whole piece in place and mark the distance at the place we think it will go. Ideally, all of the wall cleats should be perfectly spaced, but we found tiny differences in our spacing, and we really want these big bracket cleats to fit as snugly as possible since they need to be rock solid. These look awesome. Next, let's follow the same process with a 5x5 square piece of decking board. With a big drill bit that matches the width of our big hooks, marked with tape at the length of the big hook screws, we can drill a hole into the center, 1.5 inches from the top. Screw in the big hook by hand, which was easier said than done, and we're ready to hang all kinds of stuff. Now that we have the cleat making process down, we can make anything hang. Let's screw a belt that I thrifted at Goodwill into one of the square cleats so that I can safely secure some bolts of fabric overhead. Why not add one of the cut-off scraps to the back of this tie rack that I got at the REISSUED for $3? Why not screw another cut-off piece to this $12 shoe shine carrier from the REISSUED as well? Now for a few more little custom builds. First, a few cuts in a scrap piece of plywood, then some mitered corners, then a little glue and nailing action, attach on an angled piece on the back, of course, and we're ready to store fabric vertically. This giant whiteboard has served me well over the years, but ironically, I no longer have any wall space for it in here. So let's cut it down to fit this frame that I've had forever. Add some cleats, you know the drill by now. Looks good. And finally, my dad cut down and doweled together some of these boards that I thrifted ages ago to create our super deep 19-inch shelves that will go atop the big brackets.
All right, I'm so excited about how this is looking. We're definitely in that phase where there's a lot going on, and so painting some things, staining some things, kind of like simplifying the lines and unifying everything is gonna help this look a lot. But with this kind of look, there is a certain amount of like maximalism that you have to achieve. I always say that like, you have minimalism and then you have cluttered and then you have maximalism, and we're like a little bit in the cluttered stage now, but we'll just continue to add and layer and it's all gonna come together. So excited.
In the spirit of streamlining and unifying, let's take all the white metal pieces, including the other Enhet shelves and the big brackets, to a satin black finish. And let's make that yellow frame gold.
All right, everybody, now that everything is more or less constructed, today I'm gonna go in and start staining all of the pieces. I'm using the shade Early American, which is the same stain shade that I used on the desk behind me. I just wanna use that to kind of unify things a little bit. Ordinarily, I wouldn't want stain to be too matchy-matchy, but we do have a number of different wood tones happening in here already, so I think that if we can kind of like bounce that same tone around the room, it's the same one that's gonna go on the fireplace. Again, we're riding a fine line here because I do want the space to feel really eclectic and really collected and not matchy-matchy and not too like streamlined. However, I don't want to tip over the line into being super busy and just way too many finishes and way too many things. So I'm hopeful that bringing in the stain color will kind of offer one kind of unifying factor around the room so that some of the more diverse pieces can shine.
Now that all the pieces are the proper colors, we can do final assembly. First, let's buckle 2 more of the thrifted belts into each other and screw that to a long cleat to strap our vertical fabric bolts in tight. Next, let's pre-drill and screw the brackets into the long cleats to complete our shelf hangers. And once the placement is finalized, we can pop the shelves on top and screw them in as well to create a super secure ledge. Smaller hooks on more 5-inch squares for more options. And why not add that little shelf thing that came with my whiteboard so that I can rest a couple markers there? It's all coming together.
All right, everybody, we're in the home stretch here. Today I'm just going in and doing some final styling. I'm gonna be doing a little bit of aging on the frame with some black and burnt umber acrylics. I do this a lot in my art videos. I feel like that would apply well here. I'm also gonna be cutting some thin strips of leather out of the free leather that I got off the sofa at the REISSUED. I've used this one many times. I can use those thin strips to tie up rolls of fabric or paper. I can use them to tie onto the ends of brushes to help hang them up on the wall. It's funny, when my parents were here yesterday, I'm like putting yarn up there, I'm putting fabric up there. I'm like, it can only be the colors that go with the room. And my dad is like, why? Like, you're supposed to be just storing stuff. And yes, that is true. I do want it to be practical, but also when there's so much going on in a space like this, I think it's a good idea to really curate what you're seeing. Of course, I have some fabric that doesn't really go with it, so I'm either gonna store that somewhere else or I'm trying to put it like in the back where you won't see it. You know, just being strategic about hiding the things that don't really go with the whole aesthetic and allowing the things that do feel like the right color and the right feel to come to the forefront so that everything still feels kind of unified and aesthetic even though it's functional, right? Alright everybody, I am so excited with how this project turned out and I cannot wait to show you. This is going to be one of those projects where I ask you to meet me halfway and use your imagination in the reveal. I'm really happy with the way that I styled the space and with the arrangement that I came up with, but you're going to see that big honking fireplace in the middle that looks like crap. It's still in the process of being stripped. The tile has been removed so that it can be retiled. So just kind of like ignore that part and focus on the beautiful surround. Keep in mind that this can grow and change with me as I have different artwork, different tools, different supplies. Everything can come right up off the wall and be rearranged to any other place where there's a cleat. So it's a really great system for my needs. Be sure to drop a comment down below to let me know what you think about the finished look. Let's check it out.